Hey all, before this video starts, I just want to say a huge thank you for 1000 subscribers. To have this kind of milestone as an EToH YouTuber is absolutely amazing, so thank you. I'll be making a Q&A for 1000 subscribers, so drop your questions below and I'll try to answer them. Let's get into the video. When I last recorded this video, I previously said that Tower of Wicked Fortress was my least favourite extreme. I've since changed my mind. This tower is actually not too bad in terms of gameplay, but my experiences with this tower were quite horrible. The difficulty in this tower is fairly inconsistent, with there being a few spikes on 5 with the slope jumps, and then where you get the real spike is after floor 6, where the red floors begin. Speaking of floor 6, I do get the idea of the insta-kill spinner, and while the gameplay itself is easy, albeit somewhat staggered in terms of the pacing, once you get past it you just have to pray to whatever you believe in to not hit the insta-kill when you fall and have your run ended. While it is a decent mix of purism and client object gameplay, I still wasn't a huge fan of its usage. I can see some people liking this tower's gameplay choice, but personally I'm not a fan. The difficulty is a bit too inconsistent and the gameplay wasn't to my liking. The design of this tower is cool though, and the idea behind it is nice. So, why the swap with TOTB? Its gameplay is slightly more bearable, albeit having a completely different style to TOTB entirely. Its gameplay style is semi-decent, although I'm not a fan of the speed pad mechanic, but it's kinda fun once you get used to it. I personally feel like this is a good example of a tower that's kind of fun to play on a no-clip run, but horrible to play legit, which is what I learned very quickly. On my winning run, I didn't take very long and beat it with my first attempt of the day, which is a slight reprieve. This tower can really bog you down after a while though, as floor 10 outside is super punishing, and a fail results in restarting your run, with a teensy amounts of button progress on floor 10. With that being said though, however, I do like the tower's small amount of button and speedrun usage. Although you don't have to go that fast, it's kinda cool. I don't hate this tower, it's just not my preference for an extreme tower. Tower of Hopeless Hell is one of the only towers in the game to be completely purist, meaning that it uses no client objects in the core of its gameplay. Well, it does use lighting changes, but those aren't accounted in its main gameplay. For a majority of this tower, it's fairly basic purism. It's not very complex, and I didn't have too much of a struggle when I beat it legit for the first time. I will say though, I found myself loop failing from 8 to 9 back to 7 quite a lot, but thankfully there's a net on 7 which should catch you if you fall. I don't think its purest gameplay is the best ever, as it's quite rudimentary at its centre, but the atmosphere of the tower is quite cool, one of the first to be completely black and white with red decoration on the frame, which represents the tower nicely. Overall though, the gameplay is fine, but I'm not a fan of the random jankiness the tower likes to throw at you, especially on floor 5 and 6. Tower of Bloodthirsty Kenos is another tower that's purist, for the most part, and is quite distinct from Tower of Hopeless Hell. Its purism gameplay is infamously known for being what's called jank, cramped and awkward gameplay you might not expect, having all sorts of weird twists and turns, and more often than not, you might need to adjust your camera angles quite a lot, something which isn't necessarily required for regular gameplay. Personally, I'm not a fan of the jankiness since it's very stop-start, but as long as you take your time and find the right adjustments, you'll essentially never fail. Some of the ice sections on this tower are quite irritating, however. I think this tower could have benefited a lot without them in. Iconically, the tower is known for being really replayable since there's a final stretch outside, and if you fail you have to redo the whole tower. Luckily, the tower is quite short, so you don't have to play the tower for a long time to get back, and it even gets semi-consistent after a long time. While I'm not a fan of jank gameplay in general and the tower's ice mechanics, it's a fairly consistent tower and warrants a rebeat sometime if you feel like it. Did you know that this tower is inspired by the Tower of Inception? Or more so the frame idea was inspired by it. This tower is well known because it has a GBJ on almost all of its descending B-side floors, including the final one, so if you fail that, technically 20 floors of progress goes out the window. Whether it's actually 20 floors of gameplay is up for debate. Gameplay wise, I found it to be quite enjoyable. I like some of its mechanic usage, like the Morpher speedrun section on 5A or the glass section on 8A. Out of the two Seal soul-crushing towers in Ring 8, I definitely prefer this one, as it's more client-object based, and I prefer client-object gameplay to be more enjoyable. One thing I found to be quite annoying was the elevators on 6A and 6B being not too consistent, as I've fallen to them a few times due to them being faulty. I wouldn't say this tower is too punishing, but it can be extremely tedious to replay if you fail any of the later floors on B side. I guess you could always escape them if you so wish. Overall, I wouldn't rebeat this tower because it's fairly long, but my general experiences weren't too bad. Having recently played this tower because of its recent release, I can say this tower is fairly fun. Its main mechanic is the double jump mechanic, and stuff centered around jumping in mid-air. The way in which the tower used them were pretty fun, and the harder sections are netted, which is nice. Speaking of nets, this tower has a lot of them, which makes its actual raw gameplay slightly and ever so slightly higher than its actual difficulty of 9.60, which is classified as mid-high extreme. However, I will say right now, this tower is a pretty big nightmare to play through for the first time, trying to figure out where to go and what to do with all the double jump mechanics. However, as with any other tower, once you know where you're going, it becomes a lot more enjoyable. One thing I'm not a fan of though is the random insta-kill section that requires you to flip as fast as you can, twice. Yeah, all you do is spam flip, but there's a chance where you don't flip at all and you get completely screwed over because of it. It's a minor complaint, but I think it could have just been a harsh teleporter rather than an insta-kill. The gameplay kind of flows nicely, I like the usage of its main mechanics, and it's fairly creative. Fun fact, this tower was actually my first extreme, being beaten all the way back in July 2021. Here's my original win reaction to beating the tower. Final jump. Wow, what an idiot. Anyways, because it was my first extreme, I've built a stronger connection with this tower than most other extremes because it was so memorable to me. At around this point in the list, we're starting to get into towers that I found more enjoyable and fun to play. Its gameplay is mainly purist all the way through, utilising trusses as its key feature. Some of the truss jumps are fairly challenging, like on floor 8 for example, but with good technique and camera control, they don't take too much effort. Through experience, I found the first half to be super consistent and therefore made it easier to get to floor 6. Floor 5 is a floor that I really enjoy since it has that nice speedrun element to it, something I always really like in a tower. Unfortunately, the floor 7 skip has been patched entirely, so I gotta do floor 7 fully legit every time now, which is fun I guess. What I will say, if you want a more bearable experience on this tower, please practice the ever living crap out the second half, specifically the second half of 8 and all of 9. But don't hesitate to get consistent with 6 as well, since you're going to be replaying that quite a lot too. As long as you're resilient and don't crack easily, this tower shouldn't be too much of a trouble for you, especially that second half, which sees runs last hours and hours. I had a hard time deciding which tower I enjoyed more, this one or EToH. Ultimately, I went for paneling barricades because I decided on one factor, the diverse usage of client objects. Sure, EToH is a good experience in the sense that it's fairly short and fun to play, but its purism is outshone by the client objects of this tower. I really like the usage of the different walking zones throughout the tower, they really get you to think and they're really fun to do once you get the gist of it. The tower also starts to get super consistent after a while. The mechanics and jumps are fairly straightforward, but the mechanic usage obviously ramps up once you start nearing the end. Speaking of the end, I like the atmosphere created through the lighting changes as the music gets more intense. It's a really good way to captivate the player and create a better atmosphere. As we all know, this tower used to be insane, except it's now extreme due to two things. 1, the recovery skip from 1 to 6 is now patched, and 2, because well, it deserves to be extreme anyways. Did I also mention this tower is like the craziest review path ever? This tower is almost certain to be your first extreme, and I think it's a brilliant first choice. I love how short and snappy this tower is, with the addition of punishment, so if you fail the more punishing sections later on, it won't take very long to get back, making you able to squeeze many good runs in one sitting, unlike other extremes. I also like how the tower looks from afar, like a huge compass thing? This goes without saying, but it's the first tower of its kind to have the diverging floors option, which is a neat little personalised touch. Some towers do it with just a floor of gameplay. The builders of this tower thought that wasn't enough, so they built extra floors for the player to choose from. I personally go for the yellow path since I like the punishing element, and the gameplay being easier as well. This tower is a brilliant hybrid of punishing and lenient, got it absolutely spot on. Overall, this tower is super replayable because of how short it is, and it's very speedrunnable too, which is always nice. The badge description is absolutely true. The tower's music goes so hard. Its music perfectly fits the atmosphere it creates, genuinely amazing. This is in brilliant contrast to the almost lifeless and flat first half. This doesn't mean the first half is bad, because its atmosphere is meant to contrast with the second half. This tower drags back the client object usage, but it still includes a few to keep it interesting, and it does so very nicely. I've thoroughly enjoyed my experience with this tower, as I got consistent at the first half fairly quickly, and the second half is netted, so it was only a matter of time before I beat it. Surprisingly, this tower is the element of replayability. Given its appearance and gameplay style, it may not seem that way, however its length is just below the 20-minute mark if you go at a consistent and steady pace all the way through. I like the tower's usage of falling platforms, those were kinda nice to do. Overall, I think this tower is really fun to play. The atmosphere and soundtrack coupled with the flowing gameplay pairs up for a brilliant combination. As much as I had a terrible time with this tower in the roulette video, I still think this tower is one of the best not only in Extreme, but in the whole soul crushing category and the whole game in general. This tower unironically paved the way for more modern soul crushing towers with its built intent to actually mock and make fun of the direction modern towers are heading. Instead, it posed as a pioneer for a modern tower. Gameplay wise, it's pretty lengthy, especially the first 3 floors. They're fairly long, however the gameplay is fairly easy for the most part. Aside that, it's essentially fine. Its mechanic usage is fantastic, it's very creative, like the minigames on floor 7, and it's overall a very relaxed tower with minimal stress due to how many safety nets there are in the tower. Of course, there's the final stretch, which adds a layer of extra punishment onto what overall is a fairly forgiving tower. Tower of Suffering Outside is actually my favourite soul crushing tower in the game, so obviously at number 1 here. I loved playing this tower from start to finish. It's creative, it looks intimidating, and it's a very fun challenge. While it does have the characteristic of being fully outside, which people may not be a fan of, I like the fact that it's all outside. Much like TAPB, one fail could send you down a long way, but it's a part of the Toso experience. I love the gameplay style in this tower. It's just incredibly nice, and the CO usage is something that I credit very highly. The atmosphere the higher you go up is immense. The fact that you've been outside the entire time and you're right at the top, it just feels unreal. The atmosphere is created via the music. I just love the music choices for this tower. They add an extra layer of shine to it. Best soul crushing tower in the game, no question. And that's pretty much it. So yeah, thank you guys for watching until the very end. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and yeah, 1000 subscriber special coming up next. So drop your questions down below in the comments and I'll try my best to answer them. With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and yeah, we'll just see you next time. Have a good day, goodbye, take care.